performance habits. It is section 3, I believe, the last section, which is called the number one thing. So this beginning of this chapter starts out with Brendan, the author, talking to an Olympic medalist. And she's asking him, are you always this energized and happy? Like, what is wrong with you? And he says, yeah, I really am. I'm always happy. I always have this kind of excitement. And she's dumbfounded because they are getting ready to speak in front of 15,000 people. And the Olympist is super nervous about speaking in front of these people. And she's like, how are you not nervous? How are you not, freaking out about speaking in front of this many people? And he says, well, I am nervous, but I'm not really worried about that. I'll worry about that, when I'm in front of those people, then I'll worry about those people. But right now I'm having a conversation with you and I'm focused on that. Sorry if you just heard the toilet flushing. My son just went to the bathroom and didn't shut the door. So there's that. Boy, mom, right? So he says, I don't know how these people are going to react to my speech. He says, I've never given a speech like this. I've never given a speech this many people. I don't know how they're going to react. So I'm not worried about it. And so she says, well, I just feel like I'm going to bomb this. I'm going to do horrible. And so I'm super nervous because I'm afraid I'm going to do that. And so Brendan asks her, well, have you bombed before? Have you done this before and not done well? And she says, well, no, I've never really given a speech to this many people before. I don't have that experience in this. And because of, again, she's an Olympic medalist, but she doesn't have, experience of speaking to this many people. And he says, so you haven't done this before. You've never failed at this before. So why are you telling yourself that story? Why are you saying that you're going to bomb? Why are you creating that story in your mind? And she says, I don't know. That's just how I'm feeling. So he started to dig into, why are you here? What do you hope to get out of this? What do you hope to give to this audience? And she just says, I want to inspire some people. I want to tell my story. And he says, okay, so you know your story. You've told their story a million times. So that part's a given. You know your story. You know you're going to do well with that. You have to think about, what do you want to connect with this audience? What do you want this audience to get out of what you're doing or what you're saying tonight? And then he asks her, when you're competing, are you nervous? How do you feel when you're competing? And she says, well, yeah, of course there's nerves, but I feel happy, confident, and excited when I'm competing. And so he says, okay, so you've been here before. You know what to do. You're feeling nervous, but you know your story. You know you want to connect with the audience. And he says, what do you want the audience to see when you are, if you guys aren't muted, can you mute, please? I'm getting some feedback here. He says, what do you want the audience to see when you're up there presenting? Do you want them to see this, meek, nervous little gymnast who doesn't look like she knows what she's doing? Or do you want to look like someone who just showed the world that she is amazing? Who just medaled in the Olympics? What do you want your audience to see? He says, you have to be congruent with who you are. You're a champion. He reminds her, you're a champion, so act like one. Get up there and show them that you're a champion. And she says, all right, I'm going to do it. So then after he tells that story, he starts talking about how strongly confidence correlates with being a high achiever, or having high scores on the high performance indicator test. And he says it's really the secret ingredient that makes you rise to the challenge, that makes you be successful or not successful. And he talks about how people who do well on the high performance test tend to agree with the statement that I'm confident I can achieve my goals despite challenges or resistance. So basically he's saying life happens, but your ability to not lose sight of your goals despite life, despite adversity, that's what's going to set you apart. That's what's going to make you successful. When something bad happens in your life and you choose to continue to work your business, you choose to continue to reach out to people because you know that you have something that's life-changing for other people, you're going to continue to do that. And when you continue to do that, that's when you're going to be successful. If you let life totally derail you and you quit, then obviously you're not going to be highly successful, right? And I think we can all think of examples of this, people that we have seen in this business who have gone through horrible, horrible life things. One good example, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Alita Allen, but she is, I think, a Sapphire now in Plexus, and she told her story a couple of years ago at convention, and she was married and had two kids, and her husband unexpectedly passed away. So she was all of a sudden a single mom to two kids. And then like within months, or maybe a month or I don't remember, a small amount of time, she lost her mom, who she was super close with. And it just was like thing after thing for her. But she rose above. She knew that she needed to continue to work this business. She knew that this business was the answer for her family, the answer for her to be able to provide for her kids, being a single mom, and she rose above. So we know there's so many examples of that. She would be a high achiever, right? She didn't let life circumstances get in her way. There's also, you probably can think of some people who, the opposite, they have, whether it's a big life thing or a small life thing happen, and they let it derail them, and they let it get in the way of achieving greatness, or reaching big goals, or continuing to change other people's lives. So that is one thing that definitely sets people apart. So he says that when we have higher confidence, I already said that correlates to high performers, typically have high confidence. People with high confidence also have higher life happiness overall, so they're just more happy with their life. And I think we've also seen examples of this where you have somebody in two people in the same situation, or you have two people who the same thing happens to, and one will react one way and one will react the other way. If one of those people is a high performer, then they're going to rise above. They're going to, if there's any good to be seen in whatever happened, they're going to find that the happiness, the silver lining in whatever happened. But somebody who lacks confidence and maybe isn't a high performer, they may get stuck in the poor me, or that type of thing, and not rise above, and not have overall happiness in their lives. So people with high confidence also have a love for taking on new challenges and a feeling of making a difference in the world. So high confidence leads to all of that, which leads to high performance. He says that this kind of confidence that he's been talking about can also be called self-efficacy, and it predicts exceptional performance and happiness again. So high performance people are typically happier people. We learned that earlier in the book. and he's reinforcing that here. He says because of all of this, if you are a highly confident person, then you are less likely to suffer from burnout. And essentially that's because, one, this is an area where I need to work on. One, you are more willing to say no, and more sure of what you should focus on. So if you're saying no to things that aren't important or things that are maybe going to waste valuable time, then you're going to be more efficient and more effective in those things that you need to focus on. Okay. He also says that people that are highly confident often have better self-care. So they're health-related self-care. So they're more likely to exercise and those types of things, make their health a priority. So he kind of sums it all up by saying, being more confident is good for your health. It decreases burnout and it makes you feel happy and willing to take on more challenges and also more fulfilled. All of that sounds like great stuff. So he says, okay, so the next section is the 3 C's of confidence. And the quote right below that is, self-confidence is the first requisite to great undertakings. I love that. So in this section, he talks about how high performers aren't just born with confidence. It's not just something that they're gifted with. It's something that that high performers think about things more deeply and more consistently, and that makes them more confident. They also do things that give them more confidence and avoid things that drain them of confidence. So basically, confidence comes from purposeful thinking and action. No one is just born that way with confidence. You see some people, or I see some people who seem to just radiate confidence, and I'm super drawn to those people, and I'm intrigued by those people because I am not somebody who has had a high level of confidence. So this is, again, an area I need to work on. But I think it's easy to look at those people and think, oh, it's just easy for them. They're just born that way. But when in fact, it's probably because of the choices that they've made that they are confident. So the practice number 1, so the first C of the 3 C's of confidence is to develop competence. So basically, if you're competent, of course, you're going to be more confident in performing a task well. So the more competence you have at a task, so there's this like loop, competence, loop. I'm gonna like mess this up because it's hard to say those words right next to each other. But there's this loop. So the more competence you have, the more confident you're going to be in that area in trying new things or doing it more often. And the more that you learn and stretch yourself in that area, then you're going to be more competent in that area. And that competence, again, makes you more confident. And it's just going round and around and around. So you're going to keep pushing yourself and learning more. So you're going to be more competent. Being competent makes you more confident. When you're confident, you're going to want to do that more, and you're going to learn more and become more competent. So it's just this loop. And he gives an example here of going to the gym. The first time you go to the gym, you don't know how to do everything. You're probably uncomfortable, but as you do it more, you learn more how to do it. You become more competent, and you become more confident in your abilities. So what this reminds me of is just, in our businesses, when we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone. So we have some competence in an area, and so maybe it's about a product or something. We know something about a product. So we decide to do a live video or something about that product. So we share about that product. And maybe before we do that live video, we research that product a little bit more because we want to learn more before we share it. And then we share it, and people are asking questions, and we know the answers. So that builds our confidence. but we're also building our competence because we're researching it. And obviously, when you say something out loud, when you teach something to somebody else, you learn it better yourself. So that's a good example, I think. And he says that confidence, again, is not a fixed personality trait. It's a muscle you build through exercise. So you're going to become more confident the more you work on it and the more you work on being competent. Was that confusing enough with those two words? So he says that high performers say that they are confident because they've had years of focus, learning, practice, and skill development. So again, they've worked at it. You don't just become confident one day. It's something you have to work at. Okay. And then they say that, or he says that high performers have confidence not only because of the skills that they've already acquired, but because they know they know in their mind, I accomplished X, so I believe that I am able and competent enough to figure out why. So basically, even if you don't know something about a certain area, you have confidence that you're able to learn in that area. So you have confidence that you will become competent in that area. Does that all? I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, please put in the comments. It's a little bit messy, I guess. So basically, it's high performers' confidence is not tied to one specific competency, but rather to a belief that they could adequately handle things in the future, even if they don't have experience in that area, because they have a confidence in their ability to learn. So they may not have competence in that area, but they have confidence in their ability to learn and become competent. Okay. On page 332, he continues talking about this and how high performers have this internal voice that say, I believe in my ability to figure things out. So basically, you don't have to know it all. We say this all the time, right? In Plexus, you don't have to know everything about the products. You don't have to know everything about the compensation plan, but you have to be willing to, try to learn, to put in some effort to learn, and you have to believe that you're able to learn that information. Believe that you can learn it and you can share it with people. And when you realize that you have the ability to learn those things, it makes sharing that much easier, because I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to share until I know everything. Well, first of all, you're never going to know everything ever about anything, because there's always going to be more out there to learn, right? And second of all, you may as well be sharing and changing lives and earning a paycheck while you learn that information. And you ask questions of us, and we can answer those questions for you, or we can give you a tool to answer that question for you, and then you learn whatever that is. And so then you can, be more confident in what you know. So basically, you don't have to know it all, but you just have to know that you have the ability to learn it. Okay. And then another thing that makes people successful in this area is that they will but take time thinking about past successes and learning more from them. So really just looking at past successes and figuring out, okay, how can I make that happen again? What did I do that was good that I can repeat and make that happen again? So it says high performers ponder the lessons from their wins. They give credit to themselves, and they allow those wins to integrate into their psyche and give them inner strength. So basically, they are owning it. Like, I did that, I accomplished that, and they let themselves feel that win to build their confidence. So high performers are great at self-reflection and giving themselves the credit. He says that low performers a lot of times don't give themselves credit, even though they put in the miles, they put in the hard work. They don't give themselves credit, and that makes them lack in confidence. Okay, so what he says we should do in order to build this area, he says at least 30 minutes every Sunday, reflect on the previous week. What did you learn? What did you handle well? What do you deserve to give yourself a pat on the back for? And he says it might sound simple, but it's really going to help you gain confidence. To think about what your strengths are, what things that you did well. When you ask somebody what their strengths are, a lot of people struggle thinking of those things. We want to be people that, obviously we don't want to be braggy, but we want to be people that if somebody asks us what our strengths are, we know what they are and we are proud of those strengths because we know that we've worked hard for them. All right, so practice number 2, the second C of confidence is be congruent. So basically, are you being honest with who you are? Are you, being true to yourself and others? Are you being you? Are you, portraying the same person on Facebook that you really are in real life? Are you being real with people? He says, of course, things are going to change. So you might be aggressive in one situation and maybe fail to be assertive in another situation. And he says that's normal and natural. But we want to be really conscious of who we are and what kind of life we want to live. And he says it requires conscious choice and work. And this is where he talks about, like, if you grew up in a household where you didn't feel loved, and so that you don't think that you are worthy of love, he says, stop telling yourself that. Make the choice to light that candle for yourself. Make the choice to love yourself and know that you are worthy of love. He gives other examples, but basically he's saying you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances or of the way you were raised or whatever the case may be. Again, I'm sure you guys have seen examples of this. So I grew up in an abusive household, and me and my 4 brothers that grew up in that household have all dealt with that completely differently. And I think it's a choice. I think you choose how you deal with your situations and where you go from there. And you have to make that choice, and you have to consciously make that choice every single day and stick to it and make sure that, the choices that you're making and the feelings that you're having, the thoughts that you're having, and your behaviors, that it all just lines up. He says high performers don't wait for others to define who they ought to be. They make the choice who they want to be, and they live in congruence to that. They make choices that are congruent with the choice that they've made, or with the path that they want to be, the person that they want to be. So he says high performers wake up each day and have a clear intention of who they really want to be, and they focus on that. They give that intention, energy, and focus. And when they do that, then they're going to feel authentic. They're going to be proud of who they are. They're going to trust themselves and be confident in themselves because their actions are congruent with what the type of person that they want to be. So this is where he draws back in that story from the beginning with the Olympic medalist. He says that he reminded her that she was a champion because he wanted to realign her thoughts and actions to that. Remind her that she's a champion, so she needs to act like one. She needs to show these people why she's a champion, and not be scared to do it. So he says that it's super important to enter each week with intention for who you want to be, then align your actions with that self-image, and you'll gain greater confidence. He also says avoid little lies, because your heart and your soul want to know that you've lived an honest life. If you break that trust, if you're telling lies, then you're risking feeling incongruent and ruining your performance. If you feel incongruent, then you're not going to be confident in your actions. If you feel like what you're doing is not aligning with the person that you are, not aligning with your heart, what's in your heart, then you're not going to perform well, because you're not going to feel good about that. Practice number 3, or the third C in confidence, is enjoy connecting. The quote here, I like this one too. It says, you can make more friends in 2 months of becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. And that's Dale Carnegie. So we read his book. So that's maybe a familiar quote for you guys. But he says, high performers enjoy connecting with people. And he says, don't get caught up in, if you're an introvert, which I am, he says, don't get caught up in, well, I'm an introvert, so I can't really do this because, connecting with people is scary, or that's not, where I feel the most confident, or whatever. And he says, really, if you look at successful people, high performers, about 50% of them are extroverts and about 50% are introverts. So whatever you are, introvert or extrovert, it doesn't matter. You can still be a high performer. He says that, even people that are super introverts, they are high performers because they've learned the value of relating to others. They've learned that by connecting with others, they're going to learn more about themselves and the world. And connecting with others is going to inspire greater congruence and confidence. So this is going to connect with those first 2. Says the more you work with people, the more you learn about yourself, the more you learn new ways of thinking, new skills, new ways of serving. So you can learn a lot from other people. And that's why high performers are so motivated to connect with other people. And so he says, if you're not a people person, that's okay. Don't be worried about that. Worry about whether, so he says, do you want to learn from others? And will you take the time to do it? So even if you maybe don't enjoy connecting with others, he says, the best way to learn from other people is by taking the time and connecting with them. And that'll help you to gain confidence in yourself, because you're going to learn a lot. Okay, so he says high performers' confidence comes from a mindset that says, I know I'll do well with others because I'll be genuinely interested in them because I want to learn. So if you don't have that internal motivation to be connected with others because you're not a people person or you're an introvert, just know that you can be good at connecting with other people if you are genuinely interested in them and what they can teach you about yourself and about the world. Okay, so the last part of this is a formula and farewell for now. He says that as you think of these 3 C's that we just went over, remember that what drives these people, what drives high performers, what drives the development of high performers in each of these areas is another C. It's curiosity. And so he says it's curiosity that helped them to develop confidence, so their knowledge, skills, and ability. It drove their self-examination, and then it also made them want to seek out others because they thought that they could learn something from them. So he says that you don't have to pretend to be a superhuman. You just have to care enough to learn new things, to live in alignment with who you are or who you want to become, and to take interest in others. And those things together are going to help you to be more confident, which in turn will help you to be more more of a high achiever. Okay. He says, this all sounds great, right? But it's not going to be easy. He says that ease is not the objective in personal development, growth is, which we all know that personal development is not always easy. And there will be struggles, but he says it'll be worth it. And he encourages all of us to have the 6 high performance habits somewhere where we can see them every day so that we can get curious about these things, so we can try to develop these things more and become more confident and become more high achievers. So again, the high performance habits were seek clarity on who you want to be, how you want to interact with others. 2, generate energy so you can sustain focus, effort, and well-being. 3 is raise the necessity. This means actively tapping into the reasons you must perform well. 4, increase productivity. And in order to do this, you're going to have to minimize distractions. Number 5 is develop influence, and number 6 is demonstrate courage. So he says, from now on, every time that you went to a meeting, before every phone call, before you start a new project or a new goal, look at these 6 habits. He says every 60 days, he wants us to retake the high performance indicator test to track our progress. I mean, how often do we read these books or watch videos from amazing, smart people who give us great advice, and then we don't implement it? If we're not implementing this, if we're not reviewing this, if we're not pushing ourselves to do better in these areas, then what's the point, right? So we've got to work to implement these things. And then the great thing about this is we do have that high performance indicator test where we can check in and see how we're doing and see that we're improving in certain areas. If you took that test at the beginning of this book, then you kind of know which areas you really need to focus on. So I personally am going to focus on those areas the most. And then once I improve my scores in those areas, then I can improve some of the other scores even more. So that is all I've got. What questions does anybody have or anything to add? So we are talking about which book study we'll do next. So we will be letting you guys know that soon. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this book. It has been a hard one for me, but a really good one. I think it's going to help me grow a lot. So hopefully it'll do the same for you. Laura says, so good, I'm going to reread. Yes, I feel like this is something I'm going to have to read multiple times to really digest it all and get the max benefit from it for sure. So I'm going to go back through and read those chapters again with the habits that I did not score as high on. So I'm going to read those chapters again so I can really focus on that. And then I'll read the ones that I scored higher on once I improve my other scores. So, alrighty, well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a wonderful evening. Talk to you soon.